Hi there guys, Mr. Martin here. Thanks again so much for joining me. Now in this video, what we're going to start looking at are the individual specific approaches to studying sleep and dreams. And the first one we're going to start with here is the biological approach. So like anything in psychology where we approach things biologically, we're thinking the brain, we're thinking the nervous system, and we're thinking the hormones that fit everything together. So let's dive in and see what biology can tell us about the sleep and dreams that we all have. So just like when you're a biological psychologist trying to explain memory, really all you're going to do here is focus on the brain, eyes, the hormones that tie everything together, as I've just said. Now, what we're really interested in terms of sleep is something called a body rhythm. Now, there are lots of these. You'll be familiar with the word circadian in terms of a circadian rhythm. Sleep is a circadian rhythm. A circadian rhythm is something that happens once every day. So, for example, you wake up, you go about your day, and then you fall asleep, and then the whole thing repeats the next day, and the next day, and so on and so on and so on. There are other types of rhythm, but realistically, circadian is the only one we are interested in. As a biological psychologist, we're also interested in the effect of light on how sleepy you feel, and also to some degree how alert you feel as well. So this is the context that we want to explore sleep and dreams in. Let's go into the brain for a second and let's see where, if you like, sleep happens. So if you think about sleep as being a circadian rhythm, well, what tells you that you are about to fall asleep, or what tells you that it's time to wake up? Well, it turns out what's in charge of that is something called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. You guys can just refer to that as the SCN. No need to refer to it as the suprachiasmatic nucleus every time. So the SCN, what it does is it sends daily impulses up from this little bit here, up to something called the pineal gland. So what it tells the pineal gland to do is produce a hormone that we call melatonin. Now melatonin, like we've looked at in the Nature of Sleep videos, is realistically the sleep chemical. That's the stuff that tells you when you're sleepy. It's also the stuff that tells you when you're about to wake up again. So as the SCN is telling the pineal gland to produce melatonin, that's what's telling you to go to sleep. That's what's activating your sleep mechanisms. How does the SCN know when to go to sleep? Well, all to do with the time of day it is. Now, way back in history, way back in sort of primitive times, we didn't have any electronic lights. We didn't have the big sort of incandescent bulbs that we have now. It was the sun that dictated when we were awake and when we are asleep. So during the day, as light falls on your retina, the retina tells the SCN, just hold off for a second. We're not needing to go to sleep yet. It's daytime. We want to stay awake. And the SCN says, yeah, okay, sure, I'll stay quiet for just now. The darker it gets, the more message that gets sent from the SCN. So the retina starts to say, oh, hang on a minute now, it's getting a wee bit dark outside. You want to start upping that production of melatonin, and so on until it gets very dark. The SCN is firing into the pineal gland, producing all that melatonin and saying, you know what, it's probably time for bed. This phrase down here, exogenous Zeitgeber, means time giver. It's a time giver. This is a German word, Zeit meaning time, Geber meaning giver. So time giver. Exogenous means outside. So it's a time signal that comes from the outside. Light is an exogenous Zeitgeber. Are there any other substances that can affect sleep? Well, there are countless substances that do so. Perhaps the best known one is something called adenosine. Now, adenosine is a chemical that's found in multiple places inside your body. But in terms of sleep and dreams, we look to the spinal cord. There's lots of it in there. Now, adenosine seems to be some kind of suppression mechanism. It inhibits body processes. So the more adenosine that you've got, the more your body starts to be sluggish, it starts to slow down, you have trouble concentrating, the more sleepy that you feel. So adenosine level seems to rise with lack of sleep. The longer you've been awake, the more adenosine you have inside your spinal cord, the more sluggish and, oh my God, I'm knackered, I need to go to my bed. As soon as you do go to your bed, your melatonin resets, Your adenosine resets as well, and you wake up, and that's why you feel sprightly and fresh and ready to go when you wake up in the morning. It's all to do with this adenosine chemical here. Another chemical that we're all familiar with, certainly I have more than my fair share of this chemical, is caffeine. Caffeine is a drug that we call a stimulant. It's something that wakes you up. It's something that gets you going. Now, how caffeine works is that it blocks the effects of adenosine. Now, adenosine, remember, makes you feel sluggish, starts to slow you down, starts to make you feel a bit tired and sleepy. If you block that chemical, well, theoretically, you can just keep going and going and going. Now, there are some drugs, some really hardcore ones, which can permanently disrupt that adenosine, although we seem to find that that's fatal. So obviously, we must have adenosine in our system. If we get rid of it entirely, it kills you. So caffeine is actually a much stronger drug than people give it credit for. It's not good for you at all, because it seriously messes with your brain chemistry. However, I do still have the occasional cup every now and again, so what are you going to do? Sleeping pills down here have the opposite effect. They boost adenosine levels. They temporarily make you feel more sluggish, more sleepy, allowing you for quick entry into deep sleep. However, again, what you're doing there is you're messing with your brain chemistry, so you don't want to use them for too long. You can have really serious and really significant side effects if you do. They tend to be a temporary fix for things like jet lag or perhaps stress. So that's why, or rather how the biological approach explains sleep. What about dreams? How does biology explain dreaming? Can it? Well, here is one theory that I'll give to you very quickly, just so you've got some kind of context about how we explain it. Hobson and Macfarlane, two very influential scientists in the 1970s, proposed something called the activation synthesis theory, purely using biology to explain the dreams inside our head. Here's how it works. Dreams mean nothing. Yeah, it's romantic to think about. If you dream about someone, it means you're going to see them again, or you might dream more if you're stressed because your brain's trying to figure out a way to solve that problem. Hobson and Macfarlane say, nah, rubbish, absolute nonsense. Dreams are purely meaningless. It's just random images that are happening inside your head and nothing more. Well, where do those random images come from? When you are in the depths of REM sleep, the brainstem, that's this part of your brain down here, inhibits skeletal muscles. This prevents movement. Now, this is important. If you didn't have that command, that switch off command, then if you were in your sleep and you were acting out something, you'd actually physically do it. We've all seen people or heard about people sleepwalking or suddenly lunging around or punching someone next to them. That is abnormal. That shouldn't happen. So during REM sleep, you should have that muscle switch off command. Now, even though we are inhibited from moving, so that means the movement centers of the brain are switched off, the sensory areas are still on, and the motor areas are still on. So this means the brain thinks it's awake, even though it is very much asleep, not moving at all. So let's combine these two things together and see how this works. The brainstem fires images up, or rather fires signals up into your brain. The brain takes these images or these signals and shuts down the entire musculoskeletal system. But at the same time, the brain thinks that these signals are awake signals. So the brain does what it's trained to do. The brain does what it's supposed to do. It uses this random images, these random signals from the brainstem, and it turns them into dreams. It synthesizes them into things that you act out inside your head. Now, how does the brain know what images to show you and what sounds to let you hear? Well, it does it based on memory. So everything that you've ever seen or heard about or watched, that's where your dreams come from. It tends not to be anything that you haven't seen before, just things that you have seen before. If we're going to evaluate this, then we can actually look at people that don't receive that switch off command. So this is a condition called REM sleep disorder. Their brainstem is still sending them signals and basically telling their brain, look, we're in REM sleep just now. But the muscles don't get that. They don't get that switch off command. So what happens to these people is they act out their dreams as if they were awake. So we've got a great animation here of a dog doing just that. You can see he's dreaming about running. All of a sudden he gets up and he smashes into the wall. And then he wakes up for real. Okay. This is REM sleep disorder. Now, dogs are more likely to do this than humans are, but some humans still do this. This is things like sleepwalking, sleep talking, etc. On the note of this little dog friend here, animals, yeah, they're not really capable of cognition or anything like that, but yet they still dream. If you've got a pet dog at home, you've probably seen them chasing rabbits in their sleep or making little barks or woofs. So even though you have this animal in front of you, not really capable of any abstract thought, well, they still dream, which suggests that it's a biological phenomenon and nothing more than that. The model is also scientific. Being a biological model, it is, of course, very scientific. So this gives us a nice, testable, demonstrable theory for explaining our dreams away. On that note, however, can dreams be meaningful? Well, Folks says that yes, they can. So they largely agreed with Hobson and Maccarley's activation synthesis theory, but he said, I disagree that they're just random. I think they're actually could be, perhaps, meaningful. And what he meant by this was, if you have a dream, they tend to be a story. If it was purely random, you just dream about random images and sounds and nothing fitting together whatsoever. But every dream you've ever had, or most of them perhaps, have a story. Why should that be if they're random? Folks would argue that this is helping us to prepare for future situations. It's basically a little training ground inside your head. You prepare for meeting new people, you prepare for doing new things, and you use your previous memories as your guide. Now, Hobson and Maccarley recognised this. They said, well, actually, that's a pretty good theory. We like that as well. So they now accept this view. They say that dreams, sometimes meaningful, sometimes meaningless, but it's still all to do with biology. Let's evaluate the entire biological approach to sleep and dreams now, guys. So here's a strength. Scientific. Of course it is. It can be done in the lab. You can tie people up to machines. You can watch their dreams happening on an EEG machine. Absolutely perfect. Testable, demonstrable. That's what we like. We also find that most mammals appear to experience REM sleep and most mammals appear to dream, which suggests that dreaming is a function of a complex brain, but nothing more than that. It's not a function of being human. It's not a function of being a thinking animal. It's a function of being an animal. A weakness to this biological approach, however, is, well, let's give you this one here. Solms, a very influential psychoanalyst in the year 2000, showed us something interesting. He took away someone's pons, or rather he examined people that didn't have this part of their brain. The pons is basically the brainstem. So you take away the brainstem, and yet dreaming still happens. So remember, according to the activation synthesis theory, dreams come from the brainstem. That's where they arise. That's where those signals come from. You take away that brainstem, and you're still dreaming. So where are the signals coming from? Very interesting. There are other weaknesses as well, guys, but that's the one I'll leave you with here because I think that's quite an interesting, quite a spicy one. Okay, guys, that's everything for this video. Thank you so much again for joining me. In our next video, we're going to be looking at the cognitive approach to sleep and dreams. So I hope to see you there. In the meantime, guys, have a lovely day, and I'll see you again next time.